Some heroes wear capes, others carry books. But Ethan Blackwood, he had something even better: two fiercely loyal dogs and a mind sharper than a blade. This is the story of a boy who was bullied, ignored, and underestimated until the day he decided to fight back in the most unexpected way. With the help of his extraordinary canine companions, Ethan didn't just change his fate, he changed the entire school. From facing down bullies to uncovering a shocking conspiracy, Ethan's journey proves that bravery comes in many forms and sometimes it walks on four legs. Let us know where you are watching from and what time you found this video. We read every single comment and subscribe for more inspiring content. Ethan Blackwood hated the prospect of walking to school each and every morning. At the tender age of 10, he was already a genius. His mind functioned like a supercomputer, allowing him to solve difficult problems and recite whole textbooks from memory. The bullies who abused him on a regular basis, however, did not care about any of it. The ringleader, Lucas Carter, and his group made it their mission to make Ethan's life as miserable as possible. A number of insults were directed at him, including freak, robot, and teacher's pet. They also stole his lunch and tripped him in the halls. Ethan made an effort to ignore them, but the harsh behavior just became more severe. Ethan went to the principal's office one day in a state of deep desperation for assistance. His voice was soft as he said, "They won't leave me alone." When Principal Higgins looked up from his desk, he did so very briefly. To quote Ethan, "Kids will be kids, raise your game." At that same moment, Ethan had the realization that if no one was going to assist him, he would have to assist himself. Not your typical family, Ethan's family was. His father had been a K-9 unit trainer in the past, and his house was full with very well-trained guard dogs. These were not the sort of dogs that were cuddly and fluffy, rather, they were enormous, intelligent creatures who were bred for obedience and strength. One of them was Titan, a German Shepherd with military-level discipline, and the other was Valkyrie, a German Shepherd. Ethan spent many weeks getting ready. Both Titan and Valkyrie learned new instructions from him, including guard, silent watch, and intimidate. From that point on, they learned to only answer to him and to remain still until they were given an instruction. Afterward, he made his move on a certain morning. When Ethan entered the school grounds with Titan and Valkyrie at his side, the whole yard became quiet. Ethan was accompanying Titan and Valkyrie. The canines were massive, powerful, and sleek, and their eyes were a piercing amber color. Simply being in their company was like having a force field around Ethan. Children stopped in the middle of their step. Teachers stared in awe. Those who had been laughing near the swings, including Lucas and his company, immediately became pale. Ethan did not utter a single word. All he did was walk ahead, and the dogs followed his every step with the utmost accuracy. Always the idiot, Lucas attempted to put up a strong front. "What, you need your mutts to protect you now?" he said with disapproval. Ethan gave a smirk. "Sit." "Well, that is not a command to the dogs, it is to Lucas." Titan emitted a low, rumbling growl from his mouth. The ears of Valkyrie were pinned back, and her fangs were exposed to the point where they glinted in the sunshine. Luke sat down immediately on the ground. The whole school let out a collective gasp and laughed nervously in response. Ethan wasn't able to chuckle. "From this point forward, if anyone touches me, insults me, or even looks at me in the wrong way, my dogs will know," he added in a calm and collected manner while kneeling next to Titan and caressing his fur. More was not required of him to say. This was a very obvious statement. The school was in disarray, but for a different reason than Ethan had anticipated. A peculiar thing took place in place of terror, and that was disrespect. This time, children who had before disregarded him gazed at him with wonder. In a hurry, educators worked to revise the regulations against bullying. Even the principal, Higgins, who had suddenly become extremely concerned about Ethan's health, convened an emergency meeting to discuss the importance of compassion. But what is the most exciting part? Lucas totally avoided him at all costs. Sometime later, Ethan discovered a letter in his locker that read, "I'm sorry, not a name." However, he was aware of it. There was no gloating on Ethan's part. He had no reason to do so. It was not through violence that he had triumphed. Rather, it was through overwhelming, unshakable might. Ever since that day, Ethan Blackwood has not been bullied by anybody else before or after. Therefore, geniuses are not simply able to outwit their adversaries, they are superior than them. Ethan was able to stroll through the hallways of the school without feeling any anxiety for the first time in years. Titan and Valkyrie, who had been his devoted bodyguards, were no longer required to follow him a daily basis since their reputation was sufficient to deter the bullies from approaching him. However, something even more peculiar started to take place. The children who had previously disregarded him now muttered as he walked by, not in a mocking manner, but rather in awe. Even a few of them smiled at him. There were a few courageous individuals who attempted to initiate discussions by inquiring about the dogs, his training techniques, and even his ideas on more complex mathematical issues. For Ethan, this was a new experience because he had spent so much time being invisible, or even worse, a target. He was completely unprepared to deal with the feeling of being appreciated. After then, the most shocking twist of all occurred. Lucas Carter, who had been Ethan's tormentor in the past, but was now his anxious shadow, stayed by his desk one day while Ethan was packing his luggage. Ethan," a murmur came from Lucas as he scratched his sneaker on the ground. Titan, who had been resting next to him, raised his head ever so slightly. Lucas began to flinch, but he did not give in. "What?" Ethan inquired with a wary tone. I wanted to express my regret simply." In every case, Lucas took a heavy breath in. "Then, I am curious as to whether or not you would be able to assist me with anything." Ethan arched his brow in surprise. "Help you?" Before leaning in, Lucas took a quick peek around. "I'm not doing well in math, as in, it's pretty awful. And I won't be able to continue playing soccer if I don't pass the test. You, on the other hand, are a genius, so would you be willing to be my tutor?" Ethan came close to laughing. Could this be the reason why Lucas had been so harsh the whole time? Simply because he was having a hard time in school? Then, however, he looked into Lucas's eyes and saw something that he had never seen before: dread. Nor because of the dogs, nor because of retribution, but because of losing. The arms of Ethan were crossed. "Why should I help you?" He hesitatingly spoke. "Because I was a jerk before, it was not appropriate for me to be." Also, he drew in a long, deep breath. "I'll make sure that you are never bothered by anybody else again." "Oh, I swore." Ethan looked down at him. Subsequently, he gave a slow nod. "That's fine. One thing, however, is a prerequisite." "Anything," Lucas responded in a hurried manner. "You have to meet my dogs properly." Lucas's face became pallid. Ethan gave a smirk. "Not to frighten you, sir. So that you may see that they are not monsters. To the contrary, I am not." Immediately after school, Ethan took Lucas to his backyard, where he and Valkyrie were basking in the warmth of the sun. Initially, Lucas was frozen, but Ethan gave him a treat to break the ice. "You should extend your hand. It is flat. Encourage them to come to you." Titan accepted the goodie with a gentle touch after taking a whiff of Lucas's hand. He was prodded by Valkyrie, who was wagging her tail. The chuckle that Lucas gave out was weak. "There. Actually kinda cool." He smiled at Ethan. "That's right." Indeed, they are. Over the course of the following several weeks, an extraordinary event took place. Lucas stayed true to his promise. Not only did he put an end to the bullying, but he also assumed the role of Ethan's most valiant protector. As a result of Ethan's tutoring, Lucas's academic performance improved. Soon after, more children who were having difficulty sought for assistance as well. Ethan never anticipated that he would become well known. However, by the time the semester was up, he had not only established himself as the most intelligent student, but he had also become the head of a study club that met after school. Even the principal, Higgins, saw what was going on and praised Ethan for his initiative. Is that Lucas? Ethan grew to see him as his best buddy. A smile appeared on Lucas's face one day as they were walking home together, with Titan and Valkyrie trotting beside them. You know, if you just brought the dogs on day one, we could have avoided all that drama. He laughed very loud. No, for me, it was necessary for you to find it out on your own. Lucas pushed him in a fun manner. You are a total genius. Move of genius. For the very first time in his life, Ethan did not only experience a sense of intelligence. It seemed as if he could not be stopped. It was getting close to the conclusion of the school year, and Ethan Blackwood had established himself as something of a legend. As a result of his two formidable canine protectors and the fact that he tutored half of the class, he was no longer the silent child in the corner. He was respected. However, just as everything seemed to be going according to plan, a mystery was revealed. It began with little occurrences, such as chalkboards being wiped overnight, sports equipment being stolen from the gym, and even the highly treasured robotics kit belonging to the school being taken away. The first thing that everyone blamed was the reckless pupils. After then, the thefts became more brazen. Projectors, speakers, and even the emergency money from the principal's office were among the items that were removed from the audio-visual room on a particular morning. The school was in a state of disarray. With a gloomy expression on his face, Principal Higgins called for an emergency meeting. His declaration was, "This is over now. Whoever is responsible will face severe consequences." Suddenly, Ethan became aware of something peculiar. Higgins' hands were trembling. It is not with rage, it is with dread. With order to assist with the reorganization of the library, Ethan remained late that day. As he walked by the principal's office, he became aware of sounds that were whispered. A teacher said, "Can't keep covering for you," as she walked away. "I have no choice," Higgins lamented, expressing his desperation. If the school board finds out as Ethan reached closer, the door made a creaking sound. A deep growl was given forth by Titan. All of a sudden, the voices came to a halt. Even when Ethan hastily slipped aside, his thoughts were racing. What was Higgins trying to conceal? On that particular evening, Ethan, along with Titan and Valkyrie, sneaked back into school. There was a spooky silence throughout the quarters, with moonlight beaming through the windows. Ethan murmured, "Search," the word. The dogs spread out in a flurry, their noses on the ground. He followed Valkyrie to the janitor's closet, where a concealed panel in the wall swung out to show a cache of objects that had been stolen without permission. However, a shadow moved earlier than Ethan could respond to it. With a pale expression on his face, Principal Higgins walked into the light. "Ethan, you shouldn't be here." In reality, Higgins was the victim of blackmail rather than the robber. "I made a mistake many years ago," he said, his voice cracking completely. "A person discovered that. They are coercing me into causing damage to the school in order to get it to shut down. The land is desired for the purpose of development." One of Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Who?" A voice could be heard coming from the shadows. "Me, the dissatisfied former groundskeeper of the school, Mr. Graves, who had been dismissed many years ago for dangerous procedures, walked out of the building." While he was holding up a phone, he smiled. "I now have evidence that both of you were spying on each other. You should bid farewell to your futures." Although Graves lunged, Ethan was prepared for it. Titan guard. The enormous German Shepherd confronted Graves, with its jaws bared, and barred his passage. Behind him, Valkyrie made a circuitous path, preventing him from escaping. The Graves became frozen. "Call them off." The arms of Ethan were crossed. "Not until you delete that footage and turn yourself in," as Graves snarled. He dropped the phone and ran away from the situation. However, he did not make much progress. After receiving a text from Ethan, Lucas and a bunch of kids rushed in and tackled Graves to the ground. When the police came, they saw Principal Higgins admitting everything to the superintendent while also finding Graves and handcuffs, which were made by the homemade zip ties that were provided by the robotics club. When daylight arrived, the news had spread across the whole town. The brilliant young man and his canines had uncovered a nefarious scheme. It was not to reprimand, but rather to celebrate, that the school arranged a special assembly 1 week later. As a result of the efforts of Ethan Blackwood, the superintendent said that the school is safer than it has ever been. The audience became ecstatic and cheered. Ethan received an appreciative nod from Higgins, who is now on probation but has been pardoned. A smile appeared on Lucas's face as Ethan walked out of the room, Titan and Valkyrie at his side. And so, Brilliance, what's the next step? And Ethan grinned, who will know? However, we will be prepared. With that, the three individuals walked into the sunshine, irrepressible in their action.